A lot of stuff happening in the movie news as of late. We did our special show on Philip Seymour Hoffman's work last week, and a couple of articles, many articles I've run since his death. I want to bring up that later. But another thing that relates to that in some way, in terms of everybody having an opinion and anyone with a keyboard feeling free to express that opinion in writing, it not only has to do with Philip Seymour Hoffman, but also Woody Allen and the latest round of scandals and allegations and back and forth stuff going on with him. Obviously, over 20 years ago was when he left Mia for Soon Yi, and the first cries of sexual molestation were railed against, molestation against his 7-year-old adoptive daughter, right, Dylan? 20 years later, it's being picked up again because of the Golden Globe tribute, and then a lot of cries of "How dare you salute a child molester?" Kind of a chorus led by Mia Farrow and Ronan Farrow, and then a colleague of Woody Allen's came out with a defense, and then Dylan Farrow, the girl in question, she came out with her own defense. Then another brother in the family came out and said, Dylan's lying, Mia Farrow's lying, blah, blah, blah. Then Woody Allen commented, and then Dylan commented again. And in between all of this, every blogger known to man is commenting, and they're experts on this thing. We need to talk about this, but only insofar as it has to do with movies and perception of creative talents and all of that. We're not Woody Allen. We're not Dylan. There's only two people that know truly the truth of what happened, and we're neither of those. So
I agree with that.
We have our own opinions, but there are opinions, and they don't do any of our listeners any good. So I want to talk about, first and foremost, in the most immediate sense, not should this affect Cate Blanchett's chances, but will it affect Cate Blanchett's chances?
Some people have read Blue Jasmine as being sort of a veiled kind of criticism against Mia Farrow. I mean, the character of Jasmine in that film kind of finds out about a relationship that her husband had, an infidelity that he had, and then she goes on to destroy the entire family. That's basically the entire the entire resemblance to. Yeah. So, listen, let's remember too that as to what's going to happen to Cate Blanchett and so forth, I find it difficult to believe that Hollywood is going to go back. I mean, they already gave Woody Allen an Oscar a couple of years ago for Midnight in Paris. Do you think they're going to punish Cate Blanchett for this, even though it's
no, I don't think so.
Actress.
All you have to do is look at Polanski and The Pianist.
Even though you know that when she does win, that there's going to be a significant fraction of people that are saying, "Oh, they're honoring the child molester who created that role."
Well, they're not going to give him the Oscar.
Right.
They're not giving him nominated.
I mean, common sense has little to do with this.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean,
she's playing it now. I think she's aware, Cate Blanchett, because she just accepted her Best Actress award from Santa Barbara Film Festival, or some kind of career achievement or something. She got some award.
That was it. Mm-hmm.
The only person she essentially didn't thank in her speech was Woody Allen. So I'm sure that it's on her mind, even though it's been a terrible week for her because she and Philip Seymour Hoffman were really close friends.
Right.
I think it taints everything around it. And I think that if they give her the award, it's going to be Hollywood again celebrating the work of a man that, doesn't possess traditional values. I just think that's inevitable. It didn't really affect it in '92, but will this affect his ability to work and get the same level of cast now that it's come out again?
I think that there'll be roadblocks for some actors, but I think that's probably inevitable. there will always be, you know, even in the dead time between 92 and now, there are always going to be those commenters on those blogs and so forth. And by the way, I haven't written a blog post on this Woody Allen thing, and because I don't want to do it, although it has given me much frustration on Facebook, and I've kind of avoided like commenting largely on almost all other sites and so forth because I don't want to be shouted down. But I you know, I think that it's going to be fine. In that 20-year period, though, people were still commenting about Woody Allen being a child molester, even when it was all blown over. So this is the kind of thing I truly believe that a lot of those people who have negative views of Woody Allen are people who always had negative views of Woody Allen. Look, his movies aren't blockbusters. At most, they make, I mean, Midnight in Paris made something like $60 million, and it was considered like a huge hit or whatever.
Right.
In the Woody Allen world.
Blockbusters.
Most of them only make $10 million or something like that. So that means that most
not
people
even that
already
much.
don't. Yeah, well, most people already don't like his movies. They don't get him. They don't understand why critics like him. They don't get him. They already thought he was a creepy-looking four-eyed jerk, and they never liked him. And now it's time for them to say, "See, I always knew there was something about that guy I didn't like, and here's the proof." And so that's what this is really all about.
I agree with that, but to play devil's advocate, the opposite can also be deemed as true. That the people that are disposed to really liking his work are automatically think, no, of course he wouldn't do something like this. I mean, he's a genius
right.
artist, and they can't rectify the two, which, as movie fans, as a movie show, is the most interesting conundrum to me. And you see it with several other talents, too, like Polanski or John Landis or Shia LaBeouf, who many people think is a douchebag. To what extent does that or should that affect your view of the work?
At least in my estimation, Woody Allen's work has taken a massive fall downwards since the mid-'90s, I would say. I actually think his last truly great movie was in '89 with Crimes and Misdemeanors. And I think he's made some nice little trifles here and there, Manhattan Murder Mystery and Mighty Aphrodite and Sweet and Low Down, Blue Jasmine, which is a little bit heavier than those movies. But by and large, I don't think that he's working at the top of his game anymore. And so, but I do think that, you know, those works before '89 are almost all genius. And look, if I really thought, I think Phil Spector is a genius too, but I know that guy killed that woman.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. You can see all of the evidence swirling around it, and believe me, he did it. That doesn't stop me from liking his work. Doesn't stop me from listening to
what are you going to stop? You're going to stop listening to the Righteous Brothers because
I mean, stop doing that, and I can separate the work from the person. So I know a lot of people can't do that, and a lot of people believe in voting with their dollars
what makes
and so
it a conundrum, because an artist's work is that person. But Woody Allen has always said, my movies aren't me. I mean, they're made up, they're imaginary. But I think the DNA of any movie has at least traces of the artist. It has to, because it's such an artistic kind of creative medium. So when you see something like Powder, can you help but think, well, the guy that directed this and wrote this is a convicted child molester?
Right.
I think he wrote it too.
Right.
Especially something like Powder takes on a different meaning when you see the hairless white angelic kid. It plays differently.
I agree with that, Jamie. I want to say something though. I think actually Woody Allen's films since this time, and some of them like Match Point or Cassandra's Dream or especially Blue Jasmine, there is something he is almost taunting us in those films, and especially Crimes and Misdemeanors. The most important thing about Crimes and Misdemeanors, he's talking about getting away with murder. He seems to be obsessed in some of these films about you talk about getting away with something. Think about that. I mean, that's not.
Well, his films have always been morality plays. At least.
No. But that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything about Dylan. But
how is he taunting us?
Taunting us. He's taught each of those films I've mentioned, especially Cassandra's Dream and Match Point, and Crimes and Misdemeanors, are a trilogy about getting away with something and getting, not getting caught. All three of those films deal with that. There is something there. I don't think there is something creepy with Woody Allen. I will say that right now. There is something definitely creepy with him. I don't care. But the most important thing I think you have to realize
but if these child molestation charges didn't come out, would you still think he was creepy?
Yes. There's something there. I mean, why would you have an affair with your adopted and marry her, your adopted daughter? I mean, that is. I don't forget everything.
Well, first of all, wait a minute. You are spreading the lie again. He never adopted.
But I'm not talking about.
No, hold on a minute. He never adopted Soon-Yi. He never lived there. He wasn't their parent. He was like a boyfriend that came over every once in a while.
But this is the other thing. I mean, going back to what I think is the main point of it from movie fans' point of view. If he were, without any doubt, a child molester, would that affect how you view his films, your appreciation of his films?
Well, of course, Manhattan and even Crimes and Misdemeanors would suffer because Manhattan would just seem completely unwatchable. And particularly at the end when he says, "I just don't want that thing I like about you to change," and then Crimes and Misdemeanors, where he takes his niece to movies all the time and stuff, his 14-year-old, 15-year-old niece to movies. Like that wouldn't be that great either. But also, you'd just be sort of, there would be part of you that'd be sort of sitting there going, well, yeah, this is weird. I can't enjoy these as much, particularly in the movies that he's in some ways. But I mean.
But then you have Polanski, who, without question, raped an underage girl, and who, oddly, Mia Farrow always vehemently defends. And yet, I look at his work and I think the work is so good, but he's clearly guilty. But I don't view his films through that prism.
Right.
And yet,
I guess the difference is that Polanski is not an on-screen talent, and it doesn't feel like, even though his movies are autobiographical in a sort of elliptical sense, I do think they speak to issues that he's had in his life, in his very difficult life. I think it's easier to disconnect from Polanski because the movies, he's not front and center in the films,
right?
As a filmmaker. So, but with Woody Allen as a writer, I mean, Polanski doesn't even write all of his movies, but as a writer. And as a writer that seems to trade on his own personal neuroses and so forth, as a subject for laughter and contemplation, I think that's a more difficult leap to make for
plus
people.
Woody
in
Allen
some
is
way.
out there. He's always out there at least once a year with a new film.
Yeah, that's a big difference too.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the same argument with Mel Gibson, for that matter. How you view Mel Gibson and his tirades over the last decade.
Or Tom Cruise, or Shia LaBeouf right now, or John Landis. John Landis is a tough one for me because I honestly believe that he should have been held accountable for the death of Vic Morrow and those two kids. I think it was a direct result of his recklessness. However, so I tend to avoid John Landis movies, even though I watch interviews with him, and I feel like he is endlessly entertaining in interviews. He is one of the best raconteurs that there is in the business. He and John Waters, people like that, like beautiful storytellers in interviews. Part of me would love to interview him, and part of me thinks I really there's a big part of me that despises this man.
Right.
So
that's understandable, though.
But the extra plus on the John Landis front is that really he hasn't done anything of any major note for many years, and I mean, like maybe the last movie of his that really deserved any kind of viewership was maybe Three Amigos. That was back in the late '80s. So it's a little easier to do that, you know, when someone is on the downward slide of their career rather than just continually going up or at least maintaining a certain level of quality. And also the same goes for somebody like Mel Gibson. I mean, he's somebody who's, I feel, whose work has been suffering for years, and it's easy to say goodbye to that guy, and I mean we largely have, you know. I mean, I know he's in Expendables 3, but I mean that's the first big thing he's going to be in a long time. So
the Beaver.
Yeah,
I mean the Beaver, and the Beaver's an interesting movie because it really, you know, I mean you talk about cynicism.
He's great in that movie.
He is, you know, it's an interesting movie. It's a fascinating movie with everything that's going on. You know, and that's the thing, I do, and even what's the one he did, Edge of Darkness, is an interesting film, and the fact that Scorsese wanted him for the Jack Nicholson part in The Departed was his first choice, actually, was Mel Gibson. And you think, and it's interesting how Mel Gibson is just because of, you know, and you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and then he does something stupid, you know, he keeps, like, putting his foot in his mouth.
Well, there's another difference with Mel Gibson. There's actual honest-to-God proof that we've all heard.
We've all heard it.
That's the big difference with Mel Gibson. You know,
but if you're going to his movie, and you're supporting his movie, a lot of people feel like that's equivalent to condoning his behavior.
Yeah, I mean, and they're no different, and it's no different than a Woody, you know, saying that about Woody Allen or something, but to a much lesser extent because Woody Allen has never had the box office prowess that Mel Gibson had. But Mel Gibson, it's interesting. You know, Mel Gibson was really, before he did this thing with The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson was really on top of the world. I mean, he had enjoyed a very, you know, long life as a leading man, action hero, director, you know, and everything. And then his thing with, and The Passion of the Christ did very well. And part of that is probably because of the controversy it fueled and everything. And he could have really, you know, some people would have said, you know, you did what you want to do. Why don't you just stay out of public life for a while? And every time he would come back into the public life, like with Apocalypto or something, a new controversy would come up. And with all these things, if you notice, the Apocalypto, the Beaver, he was always making, you know, starting stuff, you know, opening his mouth.
It's also possible to be a terrible person and a great artist at the same time. Woody Allen has made movies about that. I mean, look at Sweet and Lowdown or something to that effect. They're not mutually exclusive, and I don't think people are able to separate the two.
I think it's actually important. I actually think it doesn't. This is the problem. This goes back to something that we, you know, is very old and goes back to the birth of entertainment. Really, even I think you have to separate the person from the artist. I really do believe that, because if you're not supposed to, the person that's on screen or the person behind the camera is not who that person really is. I think people need to grow up and realize that. Cecil B. DeMille is a notorious anti-Semite. But that doesn't. I don't think like Walt Disney. Yeah, Walt Disney. That's a very good example, Dean. That's probably the best example I could think of. Walt Disney. But
you know what the difference is? Here's the difference. in all of those cases, in a lot of cases, it's very, very easy to ignore particularly what people behind the camera do, for that same reason that I mentioned for Roman Polanski. But it's just that Woody Allen has his snoot up in the camera all of the time. And now that he's getting older, too, and as his body is breaking down, and he has some kind of palsy in his left eye or whatever, he looks even worse. So everybody still looks at him now as a 78-year-old guy or however old he is. Like now he's still with a 19-year-old woman. I mean, but she's like 43 or something. She's a graduate from Columbia University. She knows what she's doing.
I'm very cynical about this. I think these controversies have to do with the fact that he's in the public eye. His movie has the lead actress has a very good chance of winning I think is a lock, as far as I'm concerned, for the Best Actress Oscar. And I think that's what a lot of this has to do with. There's jealousy on the other side, and they don't want to see him do well. And I said this morning, it's a perverted sense of synergy with the son and all this stuff. But I really do think this is just, guys, just let it go already. I mean,
if he were a child molester, you shouldn't let that go. But the point is, we don't know.